So while all the Instagram bros are lean maxing, we decided to take a different vein and Nona Max. I sit down with my friend Lisa Caltabiano, an author of a book about her mother in law, Vincenza, titled From Italy with Love. Vincenza immigrated from Italy under difficult circumstances at a very young age and had to learn how to thrive in a new country with a language barrier and learn how to be a wife, a mother, and now is a thriving grandmother and great grandmother. And so we will be taking a page out of Vincenza's book. We will be learning how to cook well, to love well, and to trust God, all in the midst of uncertainty and the shifting seasons of life. So sit down with us because today we want to talk immigration and we want to talk language barriers and we want to talk about what it takes to establish a legacy in a place far from home. I'm Jillian Timmo. Let's get started. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today to talk not only about your book, your family, your heritage, but what it means to establish a legacy and to study the one before you, and a little bit about your writing process.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so much.
you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored that you asked. It'll be
Of
fun.
course. So, I want to jump right into it. What's your story arc? So, where are you from? What kind of life did you build before you started to write this book?
I am from a big fat Italian family. I am one of my parents had 10 children and I grew up with 9 of us. One of my brothers passed away before I was born and just tons of cousins, hundreds and hundreds of cousins. So yeah, I grew up in a really close knit family. My dad was an entrepreneur. Out of the 9 of us that I grew up with, every single one of us are business owners in some way, shape, or form.
Every
Yeah.
one of you.
Yeah. Nobody works for anybody else. Everybody is self-employed. So, which is kind of cool. Our dad had an amazing work ethic and both families from immigrants. And of course, I married a man whose parents were first generation immigrant. They came over from Sicily. I'd always get confused, like what's first generation, second generation. So yeah, that's my
Well,
background. I
the
mean,
first
just
generation is
hardworking
you were
people.
born here.
What's that?
Right.
Yeah.
I think first generation is you were born here, right?
Yeah, I always get confused. So I
I
guess my
think so.
husband's first generation and yeah, and I would be second. Yeah.
How many kids are in his family?
He's the oldest of 4 and there's 3 boys in it and his youngest sister is the baby, which is what we had. So we had 3 boys and then our youngest is a girl. So yeah. Yeah. So he's the oldest of 4 and he also has a lot of cousins, but keeps in touch with everybody. So yeah.
Christmas must be wild.
It is. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Our family, my side of the family, we are at, I want to say maybe 120 of us now. And that's just like who's come from my parents. So my parents, their children, their
First cousin.
grandchildren, and now great grandchildren. So that's just my family. Something like that.
Incredible.
I don't know.
Incredible. Because I have to say, when I met you for coffee, I had at least a couple children in tow, right? And
Yeah, you
so
do.
I have 5. And so I had my 4-year-old, my 1-year-old, and you and I were just talking, and I don't even think you broke a thought. It just didn't even break a sentence. While pulling my 4-year-old on your lap to look at photos of your grandkids, pulled out a hair product from your purse for my 1-year-old to chew on so I could sit and have a cup of coffee while it was still hot. And I appreciate that. But were you always that way? Is that just product of growing up in a big family?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I was an aunt, however you want to pronounce it, at the age of 7. So
So you've always had
yeah,
babies.
so we were always carrying around babies. I mean, my kids now tease me because they call me the baby whisperer because I could be in an airport and if a baby's crying, I'm like, oh, I go over and entertain them and, whatever. If parents are okay with it, I say, oh, can I play? Whatever. So yeah, it comes very naturally to me. I had really great role models. I mean, I really have a heart for kids. And so yeah, it comes naturally. Big
It's
family.
so funny, how these stories, the narrative behind some of these stories. So, do you know that influencer? Her name's Hannah Nealman. She has this Instagram account, Ballerina Farm.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I have heard.
Okay.
Yeah. My girls
So they
keep
just
me up to date on things sometimes.
Right. They're good for that, aren't they?
Yeah.
So she just had her 9th baby, and there is an unbelievable narrative coming after this couple.
Wow.
Uh, there's no way you can give kids all the same amount of attention. And, people from big families find that a bit comical because My God bless my daughters. I have the American Girl dolls. I have all the little outfits. I have every little accessory, and they do not touch them because there's always been a real baby to take care of. And that's vastly more entertaining for them. And so it was with me. I started having cousins at a young age. And then my oldest nephew was born when I was entering high school. So I paraded him around.
Sure.
And he was my baby.
Oh, yeah.
And all his siblings afterwards would well, frankly, I would steal them from his parents, and they were my babies from the time I got home from school. And so it's just funny how this narrative about babies are somehow such inhibitors to
Mhm.
quality time together
It
is I think it's almost funny to big families. Like, I don't know if yours like ours, but we almost kind of wink at each other and laugh like, okay,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. My
They
oldest
they seem
sister
to make
has a
everything better around here.
Right, exactly. My oldest sister always says, she goes, "We're the weird ones." You know? This is all that people think we're the weird ones. But really, I have found, and it's really funny in our big family, in my big family, we seem to attract spouses from small families. There's only one of my siblings who married someone from another big family. When we attract these people from small families, they love it. They take toward all of it. I mean, it's just, it's just like walking into a chaotic cyclone tornado, but they love it, and people say all the time to us, they say, "I love your big family," and they love all the controlled chaos, as we like to call it.
Controlled chaos, it is. Well, and it becomes a part of who you are in everything you do, right? So
Yeah.
you another I have to tell on you for another casual drop, right? As we're talking, you were explaining how you had what 18 children over for a little St. Valentine's Day party, and
Mhm.
they were all under the age of 6,
Yeah,
7.
yeah, I think the oldest one was 7. I cut it off at 7 because that's my oldest grandchild, so I figured, well, have to include her, so yeah, I cut it off at 7. Yeah. They were between 2 and 7.
18 kids.
Crazy. It was insane.
But oh my goodness, the memories.
Yeah.
The memories that have to come from that. And you said most of your family lives in the same neighborhood.
We do. So my family is builders. Okay, so my dad was a home builder, and so I grew up on a street in a neighborhood with all of my siblings. So when we all got married, our parents gave us 2 acres to build our home on. It was a huge, big family property. And so then we just transported to another property a little bit further away. So we have like the family compound. So my kids grew up with all their cousins. So it's really awesome to watch their kids grow up with all of their cousins. And they're all we all live in the same neighborhood. So it's
I
awesome.
gotta call my husband. This is how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Acquire land,
Yep.
acquire skill,
Hmm.
and they will stay close.
Come. Yeah.
That's a formula.
Yeah. Come stay with me. I've
I'm
got
calling him
bedrooms
after this.
upstairs. We've got,
We are changing our investment strategy. It is land-based at this time to
that's
keep
right.
them all close.
I love it.
So, when you first got married, you were writing professionally at that time?
Well, it's kind of funny because I went to school with the intention of being a writer, and I will never forget sitting and I know that when we were talking about doing this, I'll never forget sitting in the office of my guidance counselor at American University in Washington D.C. And I had gone to a junior college for 2 years and then took a break in between my second and third year to get married. Okay. Then when I graduated from American, I was pregnant with my oldest son. But I remember going to American and sitting in her office and telling her what my dreams and my goals were, that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a reporter. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, are you planning to move?" I said, "No, my husband has a business." So no, my husband, he owned and operated a pizza place with his brother. I said, "No, we can't move." And she said, "Well, people don't aspire to Washington D.C. No, people don't start in Washington D.C. They aspire to Washington." I mean, I felt like she took out an imaginary needle and just popped that balloon as quickly as she could. And it was almost like I could see her patting me on the hand and saying, "Oh, that's good for you. You be that little Italian wife," which in my mind was my most important role. But yes, I still had this dream of being a writer. So I kind of put it on a back burner for a while and we started raising our family. And like I said, I was pregnant when I graduated from college because we had gotten married in between. So I'd always wanted to be a writer and I did work for a newspaper for a little while and did that. But my role as a mom really, it took precedence. And so I would do some writing on the side, but nothing major, nothing major. I've written a lot of eulogies, I can tell you that. I always seem to get asked to do the eulogies, but yeah, but yeah, so
Good
it's always been
responsibility to
something like
have.
brewing, if that makes sense. Yeah. Always wanted to do.
It's so funny. I had a one of those similar experiences when my husband and I were newly married and we were having our first couple children. I thought I was going to complete a nursing degree and eventually become a certified nurse midwife.
Right.
And I I remember they had changed the requirements for nursing school that every nursing student had to be a nurse's aide.
Mm,
They didn't have to work as one, but they had to be certified as one. And I had had that certification previously. I had worked as a nurse's aide, but I had let the certification expire. I was a student and I was home with my little one during the day. I remember going to the guidance
sure.
counselor, administration and saying, um, I'm inquiring after evening classes for the nurse's aide. I'm a mother and I have my little one during the day. My husband can watch him at night because I'd always been able to go to night classes. And they informed me that there certainly were no evening classes
Mhm.
available.
Mhm.
And we had no money to pay for babysitting as newlyweds. And so we were very happy we could afford both his student loans and groceries and rent. And we actually look back on those years quite fondly. We were building something real.
Yeah.
I think that was the beginning of our legacy. And so I remember them being a bit cold to me. And I very quickly they said, then you should probably just drop out.
Yeah.
And this was so odd to me
Goodness gracious.
because as a nurse, my mother was a nurse, she worked nights, and she had 6 children, and I was shocked. I had partly picked nursing because I could
Right.
funnel it
Exactly.
through my primary
Yeah.
calling as a wife and a mother, and yet it was becoming increasingly inaccessible to me, and I will never forget, I came home that night and was it Michelle Williams, I think, had gotten up on stage at one of these award shows and said that she was only able to be on that stage having accomplished her goals because of a woman's right to choose abortion.
I saw that clip just recently. Yes.
It was
Horrible.
And that was the wrong day to see that. And I couldn't believe it happened just back to back.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there and just holding my son and just crying and thinking, "Why is the world so set up where you can be one or the other, but it's very difficult for women to occupy multiple spaces, especially as wives and mothers?"
Mhm.
And I didn't think I was getting a lot of great feedback from either side of the debate, as it were. I think at that point, the messaging towards women was very much to vacate any other space in any capacity. And I think that real women, real wives, real mothers, there's room for much more nuance than that in our lives. And so it was so refreshing to hear how I think we need these stories. I think we need to talk to people that say, "Yeah, I was in a DC market. That was tough." And so
Yeah.
these things happened in different seasons.
Mhm.
And that has been very inspiring because you don't know who you're inspiring by being pretty relentless with not being told there's almost a threat, right? That if you are going to choose this path of marriage and motherhood, you will only be able to occupy that space well, and that is it.
Right.
And almost there's this how dare you ask for a piece of anything else. And I think women are just much more capable than that. And so it was inspiring to hear your story, your mother-in-law's story, but also how different passions have been woven into your life in different seasons,
Yeah.
and you've had a wonderful time doing it. So, what's one thing about family you did have to learn the hard way?
So I would say if I was going to say the hard way, our family, my family, and my husband's family have had our share of tragedy. People say with large families, you get big dose of both sides. You get a lot of joy, obviously, but you also are more, the numbers are in your favor to experience more tragedy. And so we have experienced some crazy things that I won't even get into. And you learn through those things that at the core, I'd say those were the hard lessons of at the core of what's your metal? What are you made of? Like what it is, are you really going to, when people have major things happen in their lives, sometimes they'll either turn toward faith, God, or they use it as a reason to repel. In our family, what I learned was it was our reason to dig into our faith, to dig into each other. I remember my mother used to say when we'd have like a spat with our siblings, which obviously is going to happen, right? And she'd say, friends will come and go, but your siblings will always be here. And she always taught us that your siblings or your sisters are going to be your best friends. And at the moment, I didn't want to hear that she was going to be my best friend because I was not happy with her. But my mom always taught us that lesson. And then watching my mother in law and how she has interacted. I want to go, if it's okay with you, I want to go back to something you said a couple minutes ago about the whole, about your experience with nursing and all of that. Coming from a big Italian family, it's almost, I don't want to say understood, but it's almost expected that the wife will assume this role, the husband assumes this role. So that's traditional. Okay. So it's traditional. Those roles are assumed. And I look at the way my husband and I have raised our family, and we do have what you would consider traditional roles, but he's not so tied into his traditional role that he hasn't changed diapers and he hasn't cooked a meal. In fact, I called him today. I said, listen, I'm going to do this recording and then I have an actual Zoom meeting for my business that I have at 8 o'clock. I said, can you just pick up dinner? He said, yeah, sure. No problem. So that's not an issue. I think that to say that women, like you were saying, can only be in that space is so disheartening, isn't it? It's just so
It
disheartening to
is.
hear that you can only have this one role and you can't have any others. I mean, that just is not the case. I mean, because before we were wives and mothers, we were talented, smart, capable members of society that contributed to conversations and everything. We didn't all of a sudden, our brain cells died. All of a sudden, all of our talents
True.
went away. Yeah, now we have another facet of ourselves to offer to the world. So,
Certainly.
yeah.
And it's so important to offer the perspective of previous generations
Mm.
to the future. So in my case, my maternal grandmother, she lived with us growing up, and I always grew up, it was very normal for me. Very unfortunately, she was unexpectedly widowed with 6 children. And it was very normal for me that she had a teaching degree, she had a law degree, she went to work, she did what she had to do. Even in the midst of tragedy, when I called my mother and I said, man, I have some opportunities here. I'd like to go back to school. I'd like to work, but I would really like to be home. And somehow I want to make all of this work together. And she was very encouraging to me and told me that, really the results of this is your children are going to see you as dynamic. And
Exactly.
that's a blessing.
Yeah.
And so I think having that context provided, written down, immortalized on paper, it provides something that
Mhm.
breathes something into the next generation. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't think it's coincidental that every one of you wound up a business owner. You can tie that directly to someone's work ethic. One of our favorite quotes in our family, when we're about to do something very challenging, borderline insane, just tipping the scales of order and chaos a little bit
Uh-huh.
more than we're confident in on a daily basis is remember the stock I come from. And it's important because, you
Yeah.
have their pictures on the wall. In some cases, you have them still available to call, and their isms will work their way through whatever challenge is in front of you. And that is the gift of family, is it doesn't all come from you.
Sure.
And and it's a good thing not to take sole credit for. You
Right.
can
Right.
So tell me about your mother-in-law, Vincenza.
She's amazing. She's amazing. I really hit the jackpot with her because, unfortunately, mothers-in-law get a bad rap, right? And I pray that my daughters-in-law feel the same about me that I do about mine. When they watch this, they will.
I don't think they'll have a problem.
Right. But Enza is really cool because, and if you read the book, when you read the book and you read her story, one of the things that, and this isn't really given away, but my father-in-law by trade was a taxidermist. He's up in age, he's 92 years old, and he's had health issues, and my mother-in-law takes very good care of him. And what a lot of people don't know, and it's funny because now that people have read the book, people that know me very well and know our family, they said, "I knew your father-in-law was a taxidermist, but I had no idea your mother-in-law worked alongside him." I mean, she knew nothing about taxidermy. And she learned that in Italy as an 18-year-old girl marrying this man that it was his profession. I mean, she came alongside him and they built that business together, but she never did it for glory. It's like I think that's the the difference between the message that women are getting in today's culture is that it's so me, 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 and do it for, your accolades and what you're going to get out of it instead of, well, you do it because not only are you contributing to society, to your family, to whatever, but you're also glorifying others and glorifying God in the process. So my mother in law never did what she did because, well, now I'm going to get a pat on the back. She did it because that's just how she was that was her makeup. That's how she was wired. She just did it. And she's just an amazing person. I mean, she's very giving, she's very loving. She would do anything for anybody. I mean, she's just generous to a fault. I mean, I've learned so much from her. I really have. And my own mom passed away in 18. So I'm just very, very blessed to have someone who is truly like a mom to me. I mean, I don't have enough words to describe her. So, people when I tell a couple people who don't know me that well or maybe acquaintances, I say, "Yeah, I wrote a book about my mother-in-law." They go, "Oh, how was that?" And it's their
Soothing memoirs
automatic
abound.
and I'm like, "No, it was a
Right.
wonderful experience."
Wonderful.
So,
Right.
yeah, she's pretty amazing. You would know she is a powerhouse in a 4'10" body. I mean, she's teeny tiny little woman. Oh, yeah.
I think too, it's easy to underestimate
Mhm.
that type of quiet commitment.
Mhm.
Because it's very normal, especially I think in immigrant families, that you do what is advantageous for the family. And it's seen in such a disdainful light these days. And I think that's so funny because historically, it is just history has shown us that operating in this hyper independence we seem to be so preoccupied with. And in our American culture, it's just not pragmatic. It hasn't been, at least for most of history. And so while the ability to be free and independent is a remarkable component of Western culture, you can lean into the hyper expressions of any new development in culture. And so I think hyper independence is one of those things. And it has been moralized, certainly. And so when we look back to immigrant families where perhaps that transition is fresher, it's more recent in the family history, you tend to more closely associated with perhaps the best of what they took with them when they packed their suitcases. So there's resilience, there is loyalty, there is a dependence on the family that also carries an implication that you're a heavy contributor to whatever the family's goals and dreams are. And so I think that's why there's so much appreciation very often for the immigrant matriarch
Absolutely.
because of what was put forward and what perhaps was removed from the spotlight to benefit the family's dreams. There's something my husband and I go back to often, which is apart from the Peter Pan story that we tell each other every so often. And we've started to tell our children, not to guilt them, I promise. Although the Irish Catholic Guild, I'm pretty good at
Right,
it.
right.
I've perfected it. But this is not for guilt. It is for perspective. And it's the part in Peter Pan where Mrs. Darling is talking about to her children. And she said that she and their father do have a drawer of dreams. And some of them they've put away probably for good, some of them for now. And some of them they kept out and they really went after. And every once in a while, when they put the children to sleep, they open the drawer and they look at things and they take them out. And some things they have to put away. And that is sacrifice, right? That is part of being a parent, but when you have sacrificed for the highest aim, when you have sacrificed for the people that God has put in your life to care for and give your absolute best to, there's so much meaning in that. That is something that I think we know we're happy to dedicate our lives to. And you read that in this story, right? You read that somebody 18 years old does what needs to be done because that was the way she was going to do things. And sometimes that's all the articulation we get on those parts of our history, but it makes it no less profound. But I'm sure she's glad that she has you to tell her story. So what would you say, how do you actually write? Do you outline? Did this story just come because you had known these parts of it for so long? How do you what's your writing process?
So, if I'm gonna be totally transparent, okay, when my husband first approached me, because we his mom always wanted to put her story on paper, and because she's an immigrant and her English, she speaks great English. Of course, I'm used to it now, but, she definitely has a heavy, heavy accent. She prefers to read in Italian than she does to read in English. Because of that, it wasn't something she was gonna personally do. So when he first approached me and knowing my background in writing, he said, "Would you consider doing my mom's story with her?" And to be honest with you, at first, I was taking the easy way out, and there's those books or those companies, like, called Storyworth, where, you can not contract with them, but you can purchase, like, a book, and basically, they send you an email prompt, and every week, you answer the prompt, they put it in a paragraph form. So I said, "Well, let me start with that." So I started with that, but I'll be honest with you, none of their prompts really were, and it wasn't that company. I ended up using a different company just because when I was researching them. But it was great to try to put it into a book. However, none of the questions really made sense for an 87-year-old Italian immigrant. I mean, there were questions like, "Did you and your friends sneak out and blah blah blah?" It's like, no, she was surviving the war. You know, so I literally went.
Mussolini was a
I
bigger
know.
deal back then.
She was a child through the war. So we live a little over an hour from my in-laws where they live. And so I would drive to her home, and my father-in-law's not doing well health-wise. So we would set him up, and then we would walk into her little sunroom, and I literally had a notebook. And a friend of mine who has a teaching background, she says, "Why don't you record?" I said, "Because this is my process. This is easier for me." It was just easier for me to literally take a notebook, like old school, and I just started with, "Mom, what was your earliest memory?" And then it just sort of organically, and then one memory would prompt another question and then another thing, and then she would think about something. And I'll be honest with you, I did tap into AI a couple times to fill in gaps for historical things, and I wanna tell you about this one situation that happened that actually was just so beautiful, and I wish I could have recorded it. But I happened to have my phone with me, and we were talking, and she started telling me a memory that she had when she was a child of Christmas, and that they would sing this like a hymn at Christmas time and for the 9 days leading up to Christmas. And she would tell me, she goes, "I can't really remember." And she started humming it and started saying some of the words. She gave me just enough information that I literally went into Chat GPT and started writing it. And I always want to cry right now when I think about what happened. It spit out the hymn. And I said, "Mom, is this it?" And she got so her eyes welled up in tears because she was transported back to Sicily as a 5-year-old. And she just couldn't believe, because I think also what we find when we talk to our older generation ancestors or, parents and grandparents, they marvel at what we have at our fingertips with phones,
Yes.
and she was just blown away that I was able to pick up my phone and within 5 minutes get the song that she sang as a 5-year-old, and I put the words to it in the book. And so she was just blown away by that, and it was just such a sweet interaction that, yes, marrying her old world memory with modern technology, and it was just so cool to see it. come to
It's
fruition.
incredible.
Yeah.
It is incredible what AI can be used
It
for.
can be used for good sometimes.
Because as our relatives age, the world that they were born into passes away,
Yeah.
and it can be lonely,
Yeah.
and it can be difficult, especially because they can be surrounded by so much that brings them joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
They see immortality lived out through their children, their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, and that truly is, it's forever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to be able to bring the whole scope of life into the present moment, it's an incredible ability to help someone reflect on the past, be in the present, see the future. We need that as humans. We are spiritual beings.
Yes.
And so it is necessary, and it prompts hope in us, and then we pass that on, and we keep speaking that into those we love. So, I'm sure that the writing of this book was a necessary and helpful exercise for her as well,
Oh,
especially as
sure.
those we love most start to undergo severe health issues, and we need that to comfort us. So, are there any of her stories that your family returns to for specific reasons? Like, this story sometimes serves as almost a security blanket for us, or this really galvanizes us to action. Like, if she could do it, I could do it. Are there any of your favorite stories
Yeah. Yeah.
that do that for your family no matter what? You can pull that to the
Pull that
forefront
one. Sure, sure.
and everyone's on board.
I have to say, not so much a specific story, but a specific characteristic of my mother in law. And I actually dedicated a whole chapter in the book to it. I mean, she was always very paid attention to counting. My father used to have a saying, which I'm sure was not his original, but you count the pennies, the dollars take care of themselves. And my mother in law was always the keeper of the family finances. For we're up to, I mean, I hate to say this, I love my father in law, but if we're up to my father-in-law, he's very impulsive and has always been. And it was always Enza who was like reeling him in. I mean, they came here with nothing. And, what little they did come here with was destroyed when they arrived at the dock in New York, and that's in the book as well. But I think that, we're very cognizant of the fact that if it were not for how she managed the family, not just all the things, even the finances. I mean, they came here like most immigrants with not much more than the shirts on their back and so dependent on family. She left her entire family in Italy. And when she came here, she had to completely be dependent on his family, whether or not they were going to take care of her. He had one brother who here, and then his parents were here. So she had to completely be dependent on them. But it doesn't escape us that whenever things have been tight over the years, money wise, we always can harken back to both of our parents, sets of parents. I mean, my parents as well, they learned how to stretch a dollar and they learned how to, take care of your family. And my mother-in-law's faith is so strong that when it seemed like they're really like, this is okay, we're eating our last meal here. This is it. We don't know where the next meal is coming from. And she would do what she did best. And she leaned into prayer. And somehow some miraculous, that would show up. Something, like a job opportunity or, check that they didn't expect. So it just, I would say rather than one story, I would say it was more her character of how she leaned into her faith and how she always trusted that God's gonna take care of us. God's gonna take care of us. And, you hear that, "Let him do the im I'll do the possible and let him do the impossible." And that's how she lived. She said, "I'm gonna do what God put me on this earth to do, and then I'm gonna let him take care of the things that are out of my control." So,
She understood order.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So,
Absolutely. So, does she have any give us the Vincenza-ism. Does she
yes,
have statements
a
that you just
Vincenzaism.
know what she's saying
Oh,
right
yeah. Oh,
away?
yeah. Well, she's very self-sufficient, and it's really fun because I mentioned earlier that she's very diminutive in height. And my mom was too. It's so funny because the two ladies together, one was 4'10", one was 4'11". I mean, they were both little tiny women. And she has dark hair and these beautiful blue eyes. And if she tries to do something that those in us in the family, especially now that she's in her upper 80s, and we say, "Mom, you shouldn't be up on that ladder. Mom, get down from that step stool," or whatever. She's up in the cabinet and we've picture of her. I can't even show you because she'll put her little hands on her hips and she just gives you this look and you don't even have to hear her say words. You know what she's saying. Don't you worry about me. I got this under control and you just go about your business and don't be bothering me. But she does. She just knows. We all have that mom look. I'm sure you did too. We would get it in church, if you got the giggles, but she would.
I'd be 2 hours and 58 minutes into that Easter vigil, and if my brother and I started whacking each other with those candles,
Oh, yeah. That's all you needed was
that
the look. That's all you need. And my
grandma
mother-in-law is 87 years old, boy, and she gives us that
mhm,
look, and we know exactly what's on her
and it's always a tightening of the lips and a slow look,
Mhm.
one of those, and you're like, "You know what? I'm actually you know what? I'm never gonna sin again. I'm never doing anything
Yes,
wrong
yes.
ever in my life again.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
very
so
sorry, ma'am."
funny. She'll go, "No, no, Lisa, no." And she puts her hands on her hips. "Okay, mom."
You can you just
You gotta hear it in the Sicilian accent, or else it doesn't sound the same.
it's not as potent
It's
then.
not the same.
So were there ever moments where you knew you wanted to or really really needed to ask about something, but there was just an odd bridge between being a writer and being a family member?
Yeah, yeah.
And how did you deal with that tension?
Well, in the course of writing the book, she would share things with me that, she would share things with me about her in laws or about, things that had happened that she tolerated. And I would say to her when she would give me these details, I said, "So is we putting that in the book?" And she would say to me in that beautiful Sicilian accent, she goes, "No, no, that's in the other book." And I would laugh and go, "Mom, you're getting one book out of me." So we would sometimes she wouldn't even tell me the words. Like she would tell me something that happened and then she'd just give me a look. And it was almost like an unspoken, please don't ask me any more details. And so I would know from, this isn't a conversation we're going to have right now. Not that she wouldn't have shared it with me, it just was too painful for her. So we would just kind of back off and then go into another direction. So I said,
I do. And I think that in itself can be a Sicilian
yeah,
family virtue in some ways
yeah,
is there's something my Sicilian father always says, which is don't throw up on the table.
yeah, yes. Yeah, some things
And
are
it's a
better left
rule.
yes.
And it can be a very valuable family rule.
Mhm.
It is a rule in our own family. And I think there's a need perhaps in our generation to discuss things that perhaps previous generations avoided, and that can be healing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I don't think Sicilians ever lose an emphasis on privacy. And I think it can be a form of protection
Mhm.
for a family. I think privacy can be a virtue of itself. It's something we always tell our kids, our home is not a stage, it is a practice field. And
I like
there are going to be many things you're going to learn in private here that I will not broadcast.
sure.
I won't discuss it with friends. That's between your dad, me, you guys, and what happens here, and that's okay. And I think in that way you can promote safety for development and encouragement to learn and experiment and be someone who's in process
Right.
at all times.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
that's another treasure perhaps that was packed in that suitcase.
Yeah. That's for sure. So some things are, like I would say, not fit to print.
Right, not fit to print,
Yes.
but
We're
this
gonna
this
save
is
that
for
for the
one
sequel.
for us. So speaking of fit to print, what is your favorite recipe from Vincenza, and are we allowed to know the recipe?
Well, yeah, it's and of course, I included some of the family favorites in the back,
Yeah.
and before I included them, I took a little poll with the family, like, what are your favorite recipes of things that mom's made? And one of them that we all absolutely love, and she's the only one who can make them perfectly, is arancini, which is rice balls.
Oh, yes.
right? Have you had them? They're very labor intensive.
We do Sunday dinners over here.
Mhm. Oh,
Your
yeah.
book is actually
Arancini is
helping
one of
me.
those, the pastel forno, the baked ziti, so both of those are in the book. But it's so funny because I would always tease her over the years. I say, "Mom, you're leaving something out because I followed your recipe to the letter.
Well, she's doing it
Not
on
turn out the
purpose.
way you did." So she's funny. But I would say the rice balls are probably really up there. Yeah.
I think I would, though. I think I would leave it out on purpose because then, like, I have 2 sons,
Uh,
right?
uh,
And so if their daughters learn to cook Italian better than me, then I lose my stake in the
right,
Sunday
right.
dinner attendance. So I do think you need to undercut people a
Yeah,
little bit.
little bit. I'll share a quick little tip that your listeners would probably
Mhm.
benefit from for nothing else. She makes the best chicken cutlets I've ever had. I mean, they're amazing. She makes homemade breadcrumbs and all of that. But a little tip that I learned from her that I've been married to my husband 40 years and I didn't know this little tip until we wrote the book together was to take your chicken cutlets and let them sit in the egg for about 6 hours before you ever go to douse them in their breadcrumbs and fry them up with the rest of the recipe. But they make
These are the secrets we need to know.
tender chicken cutlets. I know. I said, "Wow, this many years and I'm just learning." So,
This is gonna revolutionize our Sunday
little
dinner. I'm
tidbit.
thrilled.
No, I know, right?
Phenomenal.
So funny.
So, how long did it take you to write the book?
It was about a year ago, this as we're recording this now, that my husband first approached me. I've actually been done since I think right around Thanksgiving, like pretty much the whole thing
Quick process.
was done. If other people, I didn't think it was quick, but other people told me, wow, that was really fast. But I probably started with interviewing her probably last February/March. And then, I was done probably right around the holidays. And what took so long to finally get it to print on, because I put it on Amazon, but what took it so long was really getting it formatted for them, following all of the logistics of putting it on Amazon. So, because I chose to go that route instead of self-publishing through a printer, so to speak.
So, if you were to put together a starter kit for someone who wants to write a family story, say they do want it published, they want to encourage others,
Huh?
what would you say, just from your experience, your trial and error, if you will? What would you recommend as far as main stops in the
Mhm.
process? Make sure you include this, or it's going to be a headache to go back and fix it later.
Sure, sure. Well, for me, like I said, when I started, literally the first question out of my mouth to my mother in law was, "What was your earliest memory?" And so it organically grew from there. But I think if someone is not necessarily all they want to do is preserve their family's legacy and their history, I don't discount those companies that do send you those prompts. However, just be aware that you want to expound on that. I mean, I don't think that there's not value in those kinds of services. I think it's a great place to start because it gets your juices rolling and gets you to start thinking about things. But I would say I definitely, like, even with talking with my mother-in-law, as we moved through the years, because I tried to do it chronologically with her, I didn't want to jump all over the place. Like, once I put a storyline or a chapter to bed, I didn't go back and visit it very often. I would if I felt like I did find myself, let's say 6 months after talking to her about living as a child through the war, I would find myself going back and tweaking and saying, "Hey mom, remember when you were telling me about, can you tell me again?" It's almost like, I hate to use this example, but like almost like when a witness is interviewed or interrogated, let's make sure their story, they're telling it the same way every time. So I wanted to make sure that I got the facts straight. I didn't want to mess up. And she would tell me if I messed something up. Just as recently, I swear, Chili, this is so funny. Just as recently as 2 days ago. Now, mind you, the book is printed. I was telling her about someone who gave me a very good feedback on the book, and it was a friend of the family. And I said, "Oh, mom, I wanted to tell you about so and so, da da da." She goes, "Oh, Lisa, you did a beautiful job." She goes, "You just to make a one mistake." We're like pretty far into this, mom. Books on Amazon. What was the one mistake I made? And this just goes to show how she really does want to please everybody. She says, and there was a story that happened in Sicily, and I had a photograph, and she pointed out to me that the caption under the photo that I misnamed the woman that the story was about. Now, mind you, the woman is long gone. She passed away years ago. My mother-in-law was a child when this story happened. I said, "Mom, probably nobody's going to know that that's not the right woman. That it wasn't the one." And then she pointed out to me that her relatives in Sicily would know. And she goes, "It's
You're gonna have
okay,
to come out with
probably
revisions
can't. They probably won't because they can't read it because it's in English."
in English, so it'll be
Funny little
paraphrased.
interaction.
So, if do you think so we're talking about new generations and being a bit removed from the locations and the dates and what it felt like when these stories materialized because none of us can understand what it was really like to grow up during the war.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember though in our family we would be studying from our history books and we'd study say World War II material and I will never forget the day my grandmother pointed to the book and she said, you read about this in history books. We didn't know we were going to win." And there was that
Wow.
sobering moment
Sure.
of
Sure, yeah.
this is the way I mean, this would have completely changed the West.
Right,
This would have
right.
everything we know.
It's almost like
And
a
so
capsule, right?
it is. And I wonder if you could guess, what do you think maybe in summary, any advice or encouragement Vincenza would give this generation? Millennials, Gen Z, people kind of emerging, starting families, having children, becoming mothers, becoming wives. What do you think she would pass as most important to her?
I mean, if I was going to summarize, I would say if she only had a few words, she'd say slow down, right? One of the things a very common conversation that I have with my mother-in-law is she's sad when she sees how fast the world is moving. And we talk sometimes about how we both, even in my generation, I miss when there were blue laws. Everything was closed on Sunday, that you couldn't go shopping, even if you wanted to. And so I think she misses that. And she misses that she can't go into a store and try on a dress because they don't carry a lot anymore. You have to go online. I think she misses that. So I think when she talks to the younger generation, she's just, and she sees how my husband and I included, and now her daughter with her kids and growing up is, you constantly running and all of the schedules are on the wall and the sports and the this and the that, and you're eating dinner on the run. I think it would just be slow down and enjoy and, just lean into your faith. I mean, if anything, I'd say my mother-in-law is one of the most faithful people I know. Not a day goes by that she doesn't pray a rosary. I mean, I'll call her in the middle of the day and maybe she won't answer. Then she'll call me back. She'll tell me, "I'm sorry I couldn't answer. I was praying. I was praying my rosary." I mean, just those little things. She didn't announce that she was praying a rosary before she started. She just tells you afterward. This is why I couldn't answer the phone. So I think that that was what she would tell moms and these generations, that just slow down and enjoy, because like you were talking about earlier, the mortality is so much more evident as we get older, and you see that you go, "You know what, the years go by really fast. The days are,"
From what I
let's say,
understand,
the days are long but the years are short.
that is a value in Italian culture is to slow down to experience the day
Okay.
as it unfolds. And what we miss when we are in our
Oh yeah.
chronic state of hurry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One of the things, and I don't mean to belabor too long, but one of the blessings that I had while writing this book was that my husband and I were able to visit Sicily a couple times. And we actually went during the process of me writing the book, and it was perfect timing because I was about three-quarters of the way through it. And then Sicily, at least the town that she grew up in, is still predominantly untouched. I mean, you still see a lot of you still see the same mom and pop shops. Everybody in the town knows each other. You know, you go into the different places, and I was able to go to the different places in the town and take photographs, like take a photograph of where the townspeople put a monument to honor Saint Egidio, who they believe the legend that saved their town from suffering from the flowing lava from Mount Etna. I was able to go to that spot and take a photograph at that spot and include that in the book. So I was really fortunate in that way that a lot of people, if they were going to record their history and maybe their, ancestors are from Europe or another country, they may not necessarily have that. So I really feel I don't take that lightly. I
Your
really
history
feel
is long.
that I was able
Yep.
to do that. And she still has her whole family's there. I mean, she really is the only one who came here. I mean, so
Right.
everybody's
And so many of these regions have been changed, right? We went into my husband's family history, and in one spot, this birth certificate is Austrian, and the other spot it's Ukrainian, and another spot, who had charge of what
sure.
at what point,
Yes.
who was trying to conceal their identity
Yeah.
at one point. And
Mhm.
so, it is interesting. And so to be able to track history and
Mhm.
use that as a map
Yeah.
for the family's identity can
Sure.
be powerful, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
thank you so much for talking to me today, for writing this book. I think it's just a phenomenal retelling of
Thank you.
of a family story, and I think all of our stories being so unique, and I would love to encourage anyone to dive into this, to try to write it down. And I know that can be painful, especially if there has been a break in the family structure, if there has been death, if there has been closed adoption, if there has been
Mhm.
estrangement, if there's been, a fracture, it can be difficult. And so we know that while, even when our family members are around to report history to us, that not everything will make it into the conversation, not everything will make it onto the page. And so that we find what we can. And if we can't go back very far, there's encouragement to start writing down our own stories from our own lives and passing that on to
Exactly.
our children.
Yeah.
And it's such a testimony to how unique
Yeah.
each mother's story is, because very often included in our stories are the things we never broadcast and we never say quite out loud for others to hear. We just do. And so to have examples of that, to look at women who have done tough things
She did
and
tough
made
things.
big decisions. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Lisa. I so appreciate your time. And we'll link all the descriptions for the book, where to find it, where to order it. And thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Until next time. On Rebranding Motherhood, we talk about the lie that motherhood is a trap, and that if you are in a situation where you need support, then no one will be there to help you or to be a steady voice for you. I want to talk to you about our project Loveline that decimates that lie and helps women get real help in real time. We connect women with resources, or if we can't find one, we become the resource. So if you, someone you know, needs to access our hotline, you can visit us at loveline.com. And if you want to volunteer, if you want to be that steady voice in someone's life, we would love to talk to you about your heart for helping mothers. Thank you.